Hello. Okay, Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire, the latest installment in the Monsterverse universe. I'm a big fan of both Godzilla and Kong, and when it comes to the Monsterverse movies, there's a lot that I love about them because of what it is they achieve, but there's a lot that I really just don't like about them, and a lot of that just tends to sort of go back to the sort of the character aspect of these movies. So anyway, Godzilla x Kong. The synopsis is, two ancient titans, Godzilla and Kong, clash in an epic battle as humans unravel their intertwined origins and connection to Skull Island's mysteries. So, what Godzilla x Kong does really well is tap into that inner child and just transport me back to being a kid again, watching these movies on VHS, the kaiju movies from the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. And it just does a really good job at tapping into that inner child and just transporting me back to being a kid again, because for the most part I had fun. I was entertained. I was enjoying myself. And the movie is very obviously honouring a specific era of kaiju movies that I feel it does pretty well, because it does take me back to that specific era of Godzilla and Kong, you know, where you've got Godzilla teaming up with Kong and all that kind of bonkers zaniness and all of that, and it does that pretty well. And this movie, Godzilla x Kong, knows what it wants to be. It's not trying to be anything other than this giant monster mashup that honors a certain era of kaiju movies, but also bring in new fans, as this film was definitely aimed towards a certain audience, and that is kids, a much younger audience. And you know what? At the screening that I was in, the kids were eating this up. They were loving it. They were clapping, they were cheering, and it was great to just sort of hear this younger audience just get sort of absorbed, just get immersed into this very fun and entertaining and exciting world. And I thought the pacing was pretty good as well. The film is just short of 2 hours, and the film never stops. There isn't really a moment that I sort of found was dragging or was a bit too slow. And so at the moment, in this review, I've kind of mentioned a few positives about the film. Like, I did have fun, and I am going to acknowledge that. I'm not going to lie, I did have fun with this film. I was entertained to a degree. Does it make it a good film, though? Unfortunately, no. This wasn't a good movie, but it's not unwatchable either. Unfortunately, like previous entries within the Monsterverse, they're constantly stripping back on the character aspect of these movies, and they've done it even more here, which actually in turn sort of serves the story. The story is very basic, but by really stripping back on that character element, it kind of almost allows the story to work sort of more efficiently, you could say. And it's a good thing, because I don't think the writing is that great in this movie. And you've got some really annoying characters, like, for example, Dan Stevens playing Trapper. He is incredibly annoying in this movie. His performance just grated on me. And that, along with the writing, it was just terrible. But like I said, going back to the fact that the character element was stripped back, because this film, you know, we are following Kong and Godzilla quite a lot within this movie, and we are sort of following King Kong and Godzilla on their sort of journeys with what it is they're trying to do, with Godzilla trying to charge himself up, and you've got King Kong exploring Hollow Earth, and we spend a lot of time with these CGI creations. So yeah, the kind of the stripping back on the character sort of part of this film does sort of help sort of serve that aspect of the story a lot more effectively, I felt. But unfortunately, this experience, the final product, just ends up being this very kind of mindless, soulless, empty void of CGI with just a few moments of live action character moments scattered in between all of this. It's almost like sort of the character moments just end up becoming the glue to bind all these big sort of monster kind of battles and epic battles together, really. And so yeah, like literally the character aspect, the character element, the human part of the story ends up really just feeling like that kind of bridge to glue these big moments, these big CGI filled moments with these titans together, really, to sort of, yeah, and that's just how it feels. So as a result, the film just does lack soul and just humanity, which is something, as entertained as I was severely missing with this film, and I have done in most of the Monsterverse movies, to be honest with you. But you know, it does sort of look like as if they're not really shying away from this. It's almost like the filmmakers, the writers, the director, they are embracing this. And so as a result, on some level, it does work with what it is they're obviously trying to achieve with this the movie's tone and sort of the era in which it is they want to honour when it comes to kaiju movies. And so I suppose the Monsterverse in one way has managed to showcase all those different eras of Godzilla and Kong through the years, and so honours the legacy of these creatures. And when you look at it like that, from that perspective, it's done a pretty good job at doing that. You know, like I said, you know, this film does take me back to being a kid watching those older movies on VHS. So it's a bit of a conflicting one for me when it comes to these films and, you know, the later, you know, the most recent movies within the Monsterverse. It has been quite conflicting for me and a bit of a frustrating experience, because I've always been more of a fan of sort of like the Gareth Edwards movie, for example, which I felt like the Monsterverse started off pretty strong with. And, you know, what Gareth Edwards successfully achieved with that film was a true sense of scale and sort of witnessing these events through the eyes of humanity, from that perspective of seeing something, you know, giant walking through your town or your city. And that is what I kind of really like about these movies. From a personal perspective, that is what I prefer. I kind of really sort of prefer that kind of humanity aspect to these movies. Like Godzilla -1, for example, is another brilliant example. And as the Monsterverse has continued, we've sort of drifted away from that perspective of witnessing these giant creatures, you know, battling each other and all of that. And for me, I really do miss that aspect. So as you could tell, I'm pretty conflicted by all of this. You know, another example is you've got this really fun moment. It's in some of the trailers where you've got Godzilla and Kong fighting among the pyramids. And it's a fun scene. It's a fun moment. I was enjoying it. But there is no real sense of scale created. Like, these creatures don't end up feeling like actual living, breathing things within our world. Like, I know that these are CGI creatures sort of fighting each other and smashing into these pyramids and all of that, and even though it's fun, it's not really fully satisfying, because it's very empty as a result of how these moments are filmed. Like I said, you're not really experiencing it from the people on the ground kind of scenario, and just from the way in which they sort of shoot these scenes with the camera and that. It just lacks that sense of scale that I feel like these moments need to really add to the impact and to just get sort of really emotionally involved even to some degree, and it just doesn't achieve that. Look, this film, it's not unwatchable. Like I said, to some level, I was entertained. I enjoyed it. It took me back to being a kid again. And I know that if I'd watched this film as a kid, I would have ate it up and loved it. It wouldn't have harmed the movie if they had taken a little more care with its characters. I just feel like they've always struggled to find that balance, and because people kept coming back for more, the studio, the writers, they just thought, fuck it, financially it's working, so let's play into that. And that's how these films ultimately feel for me. You know, people, you know, this film is making good money, and I'm glad, you know, I'm happy that it is. But at the same time, it's almost like a sort of a green light to the studios to go, well, you know, we really need to lean more into this direction and forget about sort of those other elements which would make the film perhaps just feel a bit more fulfilling and satisfying. So yeah, take the kids. I think the kids are going to love it. I know my younger self would have loved it. But it's almost, to me, the one way I could sum this film up, it's like a cheeseburger at McDonald's, where at first, you know, when you're eating it, it's satisfying, but once you've finished, you're still a little bit, you know, you're still a little bit empty, and you just want more. And that's how ultimately this film feels for me. But like I said, I'm not gonna lie, there are moments that I had fun. There are moments which it really did a good job at taking me back to a kid watching a specific era of these kaiju movies from the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, you know, that kind of very silly, bonkers, sort of wild era of these movies where you've got these creatures teaming up and all of that. It does that pretty well. So yes, as you can see, I'm very conflicted about this experience. But yeah, enough rambling on from me. They are my thoughts of Godzilla x Kong, the new Empire, and I will be giving Godzilla x Kong a 4.5 out of 10. So yeah, they are my thoughts on Godzilla x Kong, but what are yours? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Then please let me know in the comments below and let's get a discussion going. And if you want to watch future movie reviews from just some random Welsh geek or ramble on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. My next couple of reviews are going to be for Mother's Instinct and Monkey Man. They will be my next two reviews. I'm looking forward to checking them out and sharing with you my thoughts and feelings about those two movies. And I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has subscribed over the last couple of weeks. It means an awful lot to me. I just really didn't realise that so many would want to follow or watch some random Welsh geek ramble on about film, but it does mean, you know, an awful lot to me, and I'm hoping to hit 500 subscribers by the end of the year. So yeah, thanks again for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.